The controversy is growing over Health Secretary Tom Price's use of private planes on the taxpayer's dime. CNN now reporting that Price also used military aircraft to travel overseas. Price is offering to pay the government back, but only $50,000, the cost of his one seat, not the total cost, as reported to be more than $1 million. CNN's Joe Johns is live at the White House with all the details. Hi, Joe.
Morning, Allison. Members of the House and Senate from both parties are now asking questions about this issue involving jet travel and the health secretary. Tom Price has promised to pay the money back and says he will not take any more chartered flights, but the Inspector General is looking into it. The president, for his part, would certainly love to get beyond this issue, but the drip, drip, drip of information continues.
Will the check that you're writing?
Health Secretary Tom Price under fire for spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxpayer money for trips on private jets. And CNN has learned it doesn't stop there. An Air Force official says Price also took military aircraft for two multi-stop international trips earlier this year, racking up a $500,000 bill, according to Politico. Those overseas trips, which the White House approved, bringing the total cost of Price's travel over $1 million.
We've heard the concern and the criticism, and we look forward to the Inspector General's report.
Price pledging Thursday to pay back a fraction of this total, writing a check for $51,887.31, the cost of his seats on the chartered planes, but not the military flights.
To pay for my portion of those trips. This is unprecedented.
The White House releasing a statement Thursday defending Price's travel on military aircraft, insisting that it is sometimes an appropriate and necessary use of resources. As for the 26 chartered flights Price has taken since May, the administration taking a tougher tone.
The White House does not have a role on the front end of approving private chartered flights at the agencies, and that's something that we're certainly looking into from this point forward.
Sources tell CNN that Price's partial repayment for his flights is not helping his case with the president, but that Mr. Trump is not yet ready to fire his health secretary, although names of possible replacements are being floated.
I am not happy about it, and I let him know it.
This wasteful use of taxpayer money flying in the face of one of Mr. Trump's key campaign promises.
It is time to drain the damn swamp.
It's also the same type of spending Price railed against then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi for in 2010.
I want to say to the Speaker, don't you fly over our country in your luxury jet and lecture us on what it means to be an American.
Now, the Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and the EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt have also come under fire for using taxpayer dollars for costly flights. And according to Politico and the Washington Post, Ryan Zinke, the Interior Secretary, has taken some flights too, including a $12,000 flight to his hometown for a political trip. The spokesperson for the department says that trip was approved by ethics officials. Back to you.
All right, Joe, thank you very much. Let's discuss all of this with CNN Chief Legal Analyst Jeffrey Toobin and CNN contributor and former director for the U.S. Office of Government Ethics, Walter Shaub. Walter, I want to start with you because you described what you saw unfolding yesterday with Tom Price's story as, quote, really weird. Yeah. What was it in particular that stuck out to you?
Well, you've got the Secretary of Interior flying around on a jet owned by the oil and gas industry. And then even stranger, we're paying for it. There's authority for the acceptance of reimbursement of outside travel from outside sources if you go through a process with the ethics officials. And when they reference the ethics officials, I thought that might be what they're talking about. But apparently we paid the bill for that.
So the word from the inside here, the spin is, look, maybe it was too much, but this happens. People use the government flights when they're in government office. That's how they get around. It's often easier. They don't have to pre-plan as much. They can move last second. It happens. Do you buy that?
No, not at all. This doesn't happen, and on the rare occasion when it does, it's always big news. You heard Secretary Price himself when he was in Congress shouting, "Don't you fly over America in your luxury jets?" And then he ran off and started doing that. This is completely outside the culture of the executive branch and completely inconsistent with the ethical principles of preserving the public's trust and their resources. But this is also the inevitable consequences of a bad tone from the top that I started warning about in a speech on January 11th when I risked my career to warn the president that if he keeps behaving the way he does, keeping his properties and advertising his properties, his cabinet and even lower level officials are going to follow his lead.
But yet, President Trump is reportedly quite upset about this with Tom Price, Jeffrey. So despite whatever liberties he may be taking, he's upset with Tom Price.
Well, when you look at the federal budget, which is over $1 trillion, $1 million is less than a drop in the bucket. But Donald Trump understands how the public perceives things, and this $1 million, these $1 million private plane flights, that's what people are going to remember about Tom Price. They're not going to remember anything else. And that's embarrassing to the administration about someone who appears to be, luxuriating on the public stock.
He's offering to pay $52,000 back for his seat.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I wonder if that makes it worse or better, because all it does is point out the contrast that the taxpayers are on the hook for $1 million and he's paying 50 grand. It's a gesture. It sounds to me like his job is hanging by a thread. Remember also, Tom Price is a former member of Congress who came in significant part, to do health care reform, which of course has gone up in flames. So the president is ill-disposed towards him to start with.
All right, other controversy.
Yes, sir.
The email usage. Let's start with you on an ethical level, before we get to any legal exposure because of Kushner being part of that investigation. What is the rule about using a private email account if I'm working in the White House?
Walter.
Oh, you're asking me. Well, the rule is you're supposed to use the government email.
Do you have to? Is it a mandatory thing? Can you also use? Can you get a waiver? Is there a way to disclose it? What's the deal?
No, there's no waiver for it. They're covered by the Presidential Records Act, which, unlike the Federal Records Act that covers other agencies, mandates the retention of all work-related records. Now, they do have a policy to sort of be a catch-all when people violate the rule. They are supposed to forward copies of the emails to the White House system. So
just relevant ones or all of them?
Well, all of them if they're work-related because of the Presidential Records Act.
So there is some discretion?
Only if they're only if they're not work-related. The problem is if you go around using your private system, you're just inviting investigators to come to check your email, your personal email, to see if you followed the rule to forward them to the White House.
I thought we learned this lesson, Jeffrey. Can I have the 2 years of my life back from the last presidential race?
Right. I mean, it is, the hypocrisy is almost too perfect. I mean, every rally, the chant was lock her up because Hillary Clinton used a private server.
And is that different than using a private email account?
I don't see how it's different.
Well, it's bigger. I mean, you install a private server in your home as opposed to using Hotmail.
But it's still a
Hotmail.
I went there. Thank you. Thank you for the
2004 on a New Day here.
You got us wrapped because of that. The Hotmail got the whole segment ended.
No, you don't really, honestly, you don't see any distinction between a private server?
No, absolutely not. I mean, the rule is either that you use government email or you don't. And the fact that one's a private server or one's Hotmail, if anybody remembers what Hotmail is, or Gmail, which is a little more contemporary, they're private, they are non-governmental emails.
We have to go, but we know what the distinction will be. It'll be that she had control of the emails, she decided what she'd turn over, and that there were efforts to destroy things by Hillary Clinton that we haven't seen evidence of here.
But Jared Kushner's lawyer has said we are turning over those emails.
Right.
In other words, he is deciding.
He's doing the same thing.
So it's the same thing. You're right. It is different because he had a private server, but the question is whether that's a distinction that makes a difference.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. You can all reach me on Hotmail.